experience as an English teacher and teacher trainer has been in various countries. So their talk today will focus on assessment literacy, writing and speaking tests, task preparation, practice and analysis for Korean school teachers, and also challenges in the assessment systems in Korean English teachers' readiness for the curriculum, teaching, assessment, alignment. Well, thank you both for being here, and I'm going to turn it to you now.
Hyoshin, are you going first? Sorry.
Shall I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can you see?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the first page?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to see that one. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me this great panel discussion, Spotlight. And I'd like to talk about what effect the change in the assessment system has made on English teachers' readiness for the alignment between curriculum, teaching, and assessment in Korea. Next. Okay, let me see that. Despite the government-led comprehensive English public education policy in Korea, I am very afraid to say that it has failed to decrease distrust and dissatisfaction with the school English education. Having a critical awareness of this context, I want to raise the question, why this happened, and where is the watchback effect? My presentation will focus on the watchback effect, considering the fact that policy made use of the university entrance exam as the main strategy to improve the school English education. As you see, the development of NEET, National English Ability Test, for CSAT, College Scholastic Aptitude Test, substitution was expected to lead to overall change in English education environment in Korea, resulting in the desirable English education in schools, alignment between curriculum, teaching, and assessment. And this figure shows the Korean government policy dimension of curriculum alignment. An important factor affecting the effectiveness of policy is the system, which is determined by interaction with a higher level environmental factors and lower level executives. As you see in the figure, there are three components in the topic. Firstly, the change in the assessment system, which has had interaction with the school English education policy and teachers' readiness. I'm going to look at what effect it had on the teachers' activities, eventually on the goals of English education. For example, communicative ability, communicative competence. And secondly, teachers' readiness in terms of the alignment between curriculum, teaching, and assessment. These are the questions that I'd like to address. What changes have been made in the assessment system for the last decade in Korea, and what is teachers' readiness to align between the curriculum, teaching, and assessment in Korean schools according to the change in the assessment system? This figure provides us with a framework of curriculum alignment to show how closely standards or objectives, instructional activities and materials, and assessment tests are related. And also this figure shows how formative assessment works within the school curriculum. I'm not going to talk about in details about these frameworks, but again, I'm sure that you are very familiar with these three frameworks: assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning. Okay, these frameworks have been used in the Korean curriculum alignment, provided actually as a vision or vision provided by the government. Then, now I'd like to introduce how the assessment system in Korea has been changed for the last decade from our two previous governments, Lee Myung-bak government and Park Geun-hye government to the current Moon Jae-in government. Korea has 4 main types of assessment: university entrance exam, high school entrance exam, national assessment of educational progress, and the school assessment. Due to the time limits, I'd like to mention the most powerful change in assessments in Korea, which is the change in the university entrance exam. As you can see, there was a big change from non-reference test with a 9-level reading and listening test towards criterion referenced test on reading and listening in the university entrance exam in 2018. Many Korean teachers of English argue that this change has affected English education at classroom levels in various ways. I'll talk about it later. Okay, then. Now, again, I'd like to share how Korean teachers perceive curriculum alignment. This data shows that Korean teachers of English had a positive perception of the goals of English education set in the curriculum as practical English-oriented education. Mean, you can see the mean 4.28 out of 5. This data also shows that teachers are positive to the practice of Korean curriculum alignment in accordance with the achievement standards assessment at all teaching levels and assessment in English classroom. But now, I'd like to see what really happened at school levels by looking at 2 different cases in 2 different schools in Seoul. This is a brief information about what and how tests were implemented in A middle school, which is in Seoul. As you can see, this school test mainly, I don't know whether you can see the letters, but mainly grammar, reading, and vocabulary. In the midterm exam, 37.5%. In the final exam, 30.45% about grammar, reading, vocabulary, and communication. It's kind of a speaking and writing tested. So A middle school places much emphasis on reading and grammar. In particular, questions included a high proportion of questions about grammatical usage. The ratio of speaking, writing, and listening in performance assessment is significantly lower than that of reading and grammar. Then, now let's look at B middle school in the same city, Seoul. This shows a different story. Unlike A middle school, which I introduced before, B middle school assessed and taught more about improving reading, still reading, listening, writing, speaking skills, and grammar. Performance in B school was not measured objectively, and there are constraints such as large schools, differences in ability of English teachers, budget support to prepare conditions, and the connection with the peer assessment. The case of B middle school is highly worth developing in the direction of improvement of the current English education in Korea. Okay, we have looked at the change assessment system, kind of visions provided by the government and reality at school levels with the 2 cases now. I'd like to talk about the Watchback Effect, as I mentioned before, in the Korean ELT public sectors. As the development of NEET was abolished due to the government change, considering the Watchback Effect, there are concerns about speaking and writing education for improving communicative skills has been reduced. The English education in Korea has returned to grammar-oriented education. In addition, the change of CSAT from a norm reference to a criterion reference to test since 2018 can lead to English education becoming less important. Okay, now at school level, the effects of NEET, National English Ability Test, which was abolished, development And the introduction of criterion referenced assessment of English at secondary schools have created positive conditions to decrease the side effect of the ranking-oriented competition. Measures were implemented to avoid multiple choice written tests and to expand the in-process performance assessment so as to successfully implement the criterion reference assessment. And also regulations were prepared and teacher training was provided. But interestingly, there are gaps between what Korean teachers of English perceive of the curriculum alignment and others do in several aspects. First, in practice, it's thought that alignment is still insufficient. There is a concern that alignment is being made superficially. The reason why teaching and learning in the classroom do not change is its familiarity with the teacher development progress. Furthermore, they work independently due to inertia and institutionalized norms of the teaching profession. If you look closely, there is a delay in each of the elements after the alignment between textbooks, teaching and learning, learners, and assessment has collapsed, leading as follows. So, then this is my suggestion. The change in English education in schools using the Watchback effect of a high-risk assessment, such as NEET, was difficult in reality. This suggests that it is practical to gradually change the school through small success experiences rather than drastic policy changes. Small success experiences are needed to make a real change in classrooms. Combining the effort to integrate a school with a backward design, which is an educational goal assessment class course in the system of the curriculum class evaluation cycle has the advantage of having a large effect of matching the class and its objectives, as well as having the effectiveness of the classroom activities through the pre-design of assessment. Thank you very much. And that's all I prepared. Thank you.
All right, hold on, sorry. Hi, okay, so to continue on, oh, I need to share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to do so now,
Okay,
Brian.
here we go. Sorry, hold on. Okay. Are people seeing this now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So to continue on, we do a lot of work with the primary and secondary school teachers, Korean school teachers. And part of what they do is they want to prepare for the tests that we give them. Also that it will translate into what they can show their students as well. Now, as Hyoshin mentioned, speaking and writing are not really done on the Korean tests, which is unfortunate, but we found it very beneficial for them to practice in this using the speaking and writing. So basically for about 2 years now, we've been using this kind of format, which seems to work very well. It's kind of a combined assessment for learning type of thing with your typical exam kind of practice. Now, it's usually we spend a couple hours doing this with the teachers that we work with. Again, it does work on the productive skills, speaking and writing. And we have found that it is a little more relevant for secondary teachers, but it seems that the primary teachers do find it useful as well, not only for themselves, but in what they could do with their students in terms of assessment. And I haven't really tried it yet, but if there's no reason why it could not be done online with the kind of Zoom program. So let me go through the format really quickly. So anyway, we present this task to the students. In this case, we've been using aptis tasks because that's the test that they were doing, where they analyze the task and they discuss the criteria. Then we introduced the kind of assessment for learning thing where they peer discuss and decide on success criteria for that particular task and the language proficiency. And then they do the task. Now they're aware of the criteria, so they seem to incorporate what is needed into their production. And then after the task is completed, they kind of assess each other's based on the criteria, and also compare each other's tests or performances. And then they self-assess based on the criteria and reflect on what they could do next time to improve their writing and production. It seems to work very well, and we have seen considerable improvement in their writing overall, especially in the test format. So the speaking assessment is somewhat similar. So again, they kind of go over the task and they familiarize themselves with the task and the particular criteria that usually goes along with that task. Then they decide on the success criteria again, in terms of what the task entails and the speaking, but also in terms of what language is expected of them in their performance. They do the task kind of repeatedly. So in this case, usually I put them into groups of 4 or 5, where you have a test taker, an interlocutor, an assessor, and a timekeeper, and then they rotate. So watching the performance done again and again also kind of helps them in terms of what to put into their production. Then after, they analyze and self-assess their performance and then compare it to what the assessor wrote during their time for their performance. And then they come up with an action plan to improve on their speaking performance for a similar test. And usually what we do is we follow it up with another test at some point. And it seems to improve greatly in terms of their familiarity and how they perform. So just quickly to go through the thing. So the group awareness, okay, of the common task content. So what it normally takes to go put into a task, either speaking or writing. Also, what kind of language issues come up. So they realize that they have to use less frequent words or certain key expressions and things like that. Okay, also the awareness of the task, success task content, meaning that what it needs to do to pass this kind of task, and their language that they need to do or use, sorry, will help them with their improve their performance for next, for following tests. And then the kind of positive thing of this also is that it definitely raised their comfort level in terms of taking tests. Teachers are usually very stressed about taking tests, and decreased the anxiety overall, and also built their confidence in dealing with peer and self-assessment. So, so what we've done is I've asked them repeatedly about how they feel about this whole process and the format, and it seems that it is a great success, and they do feel that their scores have improved because of this type of format. And again, I think with kind of breakout rooms and document sharing, that it is possible to do even this kind of assessment online as well. So, and that is all from me. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at the conference.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
And, we're just going to wait for Hoshinli to appear again. We have a few questions. Okay, there's the first question for you, Brian.
Okay.
People asking if they can ask you whether there is any difference between primary and secondary in terms of approach to assessment.
Uh, yes, I believe there is a difference. First of all, assessment is not as stressed at the primary level. They do have tests, whereas in secondary education, the test is basically the only thing that they care about. So, so that's why, we very often we focus on the secondary, but I have found that primary also, because they have to do certain types of lower level tests or lower, not as involved or complex, but it does work in terms of establishing like success criteria and just raising awareness with the test takers.
Thank you. Hoshinle, if I may, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, and you were showing us some numbers and figures about how reading and grammar seem to be extremely important.
Here in Korea.
Why do you think there is? And do you think that there might be a shift to having maybe giving speaking a higher importance, or even maybe writing or any other skills?
Yeah, because as I said, most of the Korean teachers agree that the most productive language skills are also very important. But my understanding, I might be wrong, but as a previous high school teacher, and my understanding of the reason is that maybe I think the two reasons. One, in terms of the I don't know whether it is true, but the objectivity, the teachers needed to show the objectivity. So the reading test and the grammar test is very easy to show the objectivity. And in terms of the reliability, I mean, you probably argued that what's the reliance, or what do you mean by the reliance in assessment? But again, so there may be very serious argument among the parents and students when you take a test about the speaking and writing. And that's one reason. And the other one is that's the Watchback effect, because the university entrance exam does not have the speaking and writing. Unfortunately, the Korean government tried to introduce the NEET, National English Ability Test, including for language skills, but we failed to introduce it due to several reasons, and that affected the school assessment as well. So still, unfortunately, we do not have in school assessment, we have speaking and writing assessment, but which is not significantly implemented. So university entrance exam does not have the speaking and writing test, but at school levels we have. But again, in terms of the, how can I say, influence on the real, learning English, then still problematic. So I don't know whether my answer would be.
Yes, yeah, but I find it fascinating and quite interesting, especially nowadays when everyone seems to be so connected. And the ability to communicate with people seems to be quite important. Do you think at university level, then you might introduce a speaking test in the near future?
Depending on the university, and depending on the university who actually teaches English to the university students. For example, I'm working at university. Unfortunately, we actually the TOEIC, not IELTS, unfortunately, TOEIC is more popular than the IELTS in my university. So all of the students in my university needed to take the TOEIC test. So again, as you probably know, you know that the TOEIC doesn't have the speaking and writing. So again, so the main, test that the university takes affects the students' direction, although that students are learning English. So yeah, I'm very sad to say that again, my university does not have the speaking test at the university level.
that just came again for you. What is the parents' response to the current CSAT English test, which has lost its function of differentiating students' cumulative competences? How do the parents feel?
Double, your position. You see, in terms of the, looking at the future, teachers all also agreed that their children needed to improve the communicative language skills, including communicative language competence, including 4 language skills, because the world requires young, generation need. Yeah, that's right. But in terms of the score, in terms of the university entrance exam, they seem to hesitate to decide whether the students needed to take a speaking and writing, and it's related. I think, unfortunately, it might be related to the, how can I say, trust of the public education, and then again trust of the school teachers. So it's more complicated issue.
Thank you. Brian, just a question for you. Quite interesting, that study with writing and speaking. So did you find an overall, I mean, you did mention that the students enjoyed it, but on a broader context, teachers, maybe even parents, I think it's quite interesting to give that autonomy and that freedom to learners to set the criteria, self-assess, peer feedback. I find that quite interesting and helpful and useful in the classroom.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in, having everybody aware of what exactly it takes to, to perform well on an exam and to reflect on their performances. So the peer and self-assessment parts of that process seem to work very well. Also, it helps because I've only used it with the teachers. I haven't really used it with students yet, but they tell me that they have used it with some of their students. But I think what it does is, like I said, it builds confidence in their performance in doing tests overall. But it also helps with other types of non-testing tasks. So I think the whole thing really makes them a lot more knowledgeable. I know that their speaking and writing scores physically have improved with their aptus performance for the tests that we give them, and that they, from their feedback, that they definitely feel more comfortable and confident in doing the tests. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's especially since speaking and writing is so neglected in the Korean schools. I think what it does is it definitely motivates them to do more of it, because I think they realize if you're teaching the language, you have to do all of the skills equally. You cannot just do reading and listening. It's just not possible. So.
Well, thank you both very much. I learned a lot. Didn't know much about the Korean system and teaching English, but it sounds like exciting times, maybe a bit challenging, for introducing maybe more skills, but definitely very interesting. Thank you very much. I hope you stay with us. And for everyone else, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back at 3:20 Singapore time with our presenters from Japan. Please do complete the survey code, I'm going to put the QR code on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brian.